The thing about me is like it's all or nothing, you know, like if you're around me, like there's no excuses, you know, because like I've been to the bottom of the barrel, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to hear about like lame excuses of why you can't do something, why you can't go to the gym, why you can't eat healthy, why you can't, you know, take time out of your day to do things that to better yourself. You know, I don't want to hear it because, you know, like I said, there's no excuse.
Drugs almost destroyed him, but that's not the end of his story. Now he helps recovering addicts, and he has whole lots of reasons to live. He spends his life dedicated to others, encouraging people to get up on their own feet.
I want to just thank you for all the blessings that you continue to bring.
Today we have Dante Morgan joining us, along with Grace, and a wonderful therapist, Jessica Ray Bryant. Let's explore some options on how to keep our heads on straight.
From a therapist perspective, I would like to know what does journaling do for you?
It helps me put like my thoughts onto paper, and not only thoughts, but it helps me like see my progress on my goals. You know, like I said, long-term goals, and then I'm able to like in the timeline I write what I did towards that goal. You know, so it helps me keep track. You know, it helps me not get discouraged. It helps me with patience and tolerance. You know, it does wonders, you know, because I'm able to like when I get negative thoughts at times, because, you know, I'm still just because, and I tell all my clients and my old response sees this, I'm like, just because you get clean don't mean nothing. Like you still got to deal with life. Like life happens on life's terms and you got to, you know, navigate through it and get through it. So when I get negative thoughts and, you know, I'm able to just jot them down. I'm able to write them down, and that does wonders because you're taking away the power it has. And if they're really dark thoughts, then, you know, I'll put it in a frying pan. I'll write them on a paper. I'll put them in a frying pan and I'll burn it, you know, because it like removes that power.
Oh, phenomenal. That is phenomenal. That's actually one of the things that I teach my clients to do as well, is to journal and then take their thoughts. And it's like taking the thought captive. You know, like we hear in the Bible, you're supposed to take the thought captive, and it loses its power once it gets out of your head and on paper, or it gets somewhere else. If you're internalizing the thought, it has nowhere to go except for down into your soul, you know, and then the soul has to manifest in some way. And of course, the devil's poison for you would have been drugs. So if you would have suppressed thoughts, what do you think automatically the go-to would be? It would be the drug of choice, or the poison, which was, you know, all the things that you did. I can't even name all the drugs you did, but you're taking the power away from it by making sure it doesn't stay inside, but it gets outside, and that there's no secrets, there's no darkness, and that light comes in. So when you journal, do you also pray, or is that like a separate thing you do?
Sometimes I'll do separately. Morning and night though, when I pray and then I get into journaling. Same with my night, because that's just kind of my routine. I'll read first and then I'll journal and then I'll pray. I'll thank God for my thoughts that I have for the day. Same thing in the morning. I'll read like little things here and there, and I'll really pray before anything, because like I'm able to open up my heart to receiving what God has to tell me, right? Because I may be reading something and something sticks out, and that's what God wanted me to see, you know. And it's crazy how it happens, because like when I read certain things, whether I'm reading the Bible or whether I'm reading a book, it always has a role that it plays in my life, you know, and that's what makes me feed more into my spirituality, because I'm like, okay, these are the signs and the things that God wants me to see. You know, it's a trip how it works. It's kind of scary, but it's like a good scary. It's just like, okay, cool. Like it just opens up different, you know, different things for you. I don't know.
You know, Dante,
So spirit, soul, and body. Sorry, I was just going to make a comment. So it's a spirit, soul, and body experience. It's a tripart experience. Recovery is all consuming.
Mind, body, and spirit.
Amen.
Yeah.
You know,
Dante, what would you say to someone? Sorry.
No, go for it.
What would you say to someone who feels like they can cut addiction on their own? They don't need any support. They don't need treatment or anything like that. What would you say to that person?
Man, good luck, you know, because you need to try. You definitely need to try. There's like very few people who can do it. And like I spoke to so many people, and they're like, the way you did it is just insane, because like it's about willpower. Like if they're really willing to put in the work, then I think they'll make it work, but there's certain routines, there's certain habits you got to do in order to stay clean. Like getting clean is one thing, but staying clean is it's a whole nother thing. And if they want to do it on their own, like I said, like good luck, because you're gonna have to get around the right people, you're gonna have to get around like-minded people and stay consistent with it, just like anything. There's gonna be a bunch of times you want to use, but in this moment, in this time after you detox, you want to really get the chance to know yourself. You want to get the chance to know your body. You want to get the chance to know your thoughts. That's why reading, journaling, praying, like meditating, that's what it does. Not only teaches you about yourself, but it teaches you about a power greater than yourself. Therefore, you could be able to move in the direction not only that you want, but the directions that's destined for you. Because I have many stories, many stories in recovery that like I look back on now and I'm like, okay, like that's why I played a role, because look where I'm at today. I think I had 4 months clean, 4 or 5 months clean, and I would go to bars and I would tell people in AA this, and they're like, yeah, you're effing crazy because, that's something you're not supposed to do. But like, I'm arrogant, you know what I'm saying? I'm very confident in myself. So I'm gonna make sure like I prove that to myself, like I was like, all right, bro, let's see how really ready you really are, bro. So I think it was like my third or fourth time, maybe fifth, I don't know. I went to a bar and like, I was able to feel the anxiety in my chest and in my stomach of like, and I was able to recognize it. I was like, this is the feeling that I get when I want to take a shot, like this is the feeling I get. So I need to get out of here. You know what I'm saying? So I was able to get out of there at that time. And I called my sponsor, then I called my mom. And I'm like crying to my mom. I'm like, oh, I had to get out of there. And she's like, I'm glad you did. And I ended up going to like the place I was staying at, and then the girl that I went out with originally to that bar because we were like around all her friends and stuff. And mind you, too, like one of her friends like offered me a drink, and I'm freshly sober, so I didn't really know how to navigate my feelings. And I was like, nah, bro, get the F away from me. Like I don't F and drink, because he asked me like 3, 4 times, and then he was like, oh, he's like, my bad, bro. And then 5 minutes later, I went up to him and I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm in sobriety, you know what I'm saying? Like, this leads to heroin and this and that. And he's like, no, I totally get it. And then they brought me like Red Bulls, but I still got the feeling, I still got the feeling that I needed to get out of there. So when I did, the girl that I was seeing, she went to the place I was staying at, and like, she came and, she was talking to me about how courageous it was that I did that. And her sister ended up calling me because her sister was always also out with us too. And her sister was one of the ones that seen me when I was in my alcoholism, like I caused havoc. I would drive her car drunk. I would like get into fights, things like that, and her sister didn't really like me. So at that point, she was like, I can see the change in you. She's like, you want to get brunch tomorrow? And then invited me to brunch. And that rekindled a whole relationship. So that's how I knew. I'm like, this sobriety stuff is definitely working, And that was only at, 4 or 5 months clean, and it's interesting, it's interesting that I caused like so much damage, and people see the work that's being put in, and they give that second chance. That's something too, like that's it's great. It's great to experience that feeling, So when she told me that, like it really meant a lot, because I'm like, okay, like she remembers, And I didn't mention this earlier in the podcast, but like I wrecked a lot of cars. Like that's another reason I don't drink, because like thank God I didn't hurt anybody else or hurt myself, but I used to drink. I would always crash cars. That's why I'm like, I crashed 8 cars being out here in California, like, and like I said, thank God I didn't hurt anybody or hurt myself, because at this point I was like, I always could be the life of the party when I was drunk, right? Because people ask me, they're like, so why can't you drink, And I'm like, well, because I'm not a normal drinker. Like my mind just, it doesn't work for me, because when I drink, yeah, I'll be the life of the party, I'll be dancing, this and that. But it's like when I'm alone is when those thoughts set in. When I'm alone is when I get those homicidal thoughts. When I'm alone is when I get suicidal thoughts. When I'm alone, I'm questioning my existence. When I'm alone, I end up crashing cars, like it's just what it is. And yeah, ever since I quit all that, I haven't crashed a car since. So yeah.
So
Good job.
you know what, Dante, you talked about what you damaged, you talked about what you wrecked. I really would like to go back and just talk about the genesis of what kind of brought some of this on. You know, we've had another male on here who came on and talked about how same-sex abuse almost destroyed life, how he went to the point of death, how he got involved with addiction. So I know that was one of the traumas that you dealt with. And the
Yeah.
reason I bring this up is because I know that there are so many people out there who do not talk about having been abused, having been molested, having been
Yeah.
assaulted, because they simply don't have the courage that the other gentleman who was on here and what you have in order to say that.
Yeah.
So I just to know about your healing process, because I'm that coming once you decided to get sober, there were some things that you had to deal with in your mind and your psyche. So I'd
Yeah.
like to know about your healing process if you'd like to share that.
Absolutely. So, and I'm glad you mentioned this too, because like it is something that's not talked about, like especially within men, like when it happened to me when I was 11, it was from a family friend at the time, like it happened on multiple occasions, and I never knew how to process it. I never, told my mom what happened. And then as time went on, I got into middle school and I started having these thoughts set in of I feel like I can't tell anybody, so like fast forward to like all my addiction, all the stuff that happened, I still had to deal with this, like I had to recognize that this is what was making me upset. And it wasn't the fact that like it happened, it was more the fact that like it made me question my sexuality at one point in my life, what I'm saying? And is what angered me, So as time went on, like I prayed about it, I went to therapy about it, and I realized, man, I came to this understanding where it was like, man, like that's not, it's not who I am. I had no control over that. What I'm saying? Like that individual was sick. So, karma is a mother effort, but like I believe he ended up passing away. Like the last I heard from that, what happened to him was he passed away. But like if I would have came to this realization at a sooner point, I would have prayed for him, because he was a sick individual. That's just what it is, And I'm at a point where I'm like, man, like I used to blame God, right? Like I told y'all earlier, I would blame God, like why me, this and that, like it ain't fair. And like part of my morning prayer and my night prayer is, man, thank you, God, for putting me through all that stuff. Thank you for letting that person do what they did to me, because I'm able to help and impact other people who go through that, who don't know how to talk about it. So that's the perspective I look at it as.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
is that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. And the more like the more you talk about it, the less power it has, and I always told men that in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. There was many men's meetings that I went to and I opened up about that. And man, the feedback that I got after the meeting is just amazing. Like 8, 9 people come up to me like, yeah, bro, like I didn't know how to talk about it. And they're like older than me, and I didn't know how to talk about it, this and that. And you just sharing that, it just, you sparked something in me, and thank you for sharing that. Like I know I'm not alone. And I would tell them, like, yeah, but you're not alone. Like it's not who you are, man. Yeah, it happened to you, but there's a bigger purpose behind it, So
I just want to say I really respect you as a man for being willing to open up about that and being willing to share and contribute to the healing and the restoration of other people. Because, like I said, a lot of people will keep things to their grave, things that
mhm.
they went through, things that they suffered, abuse. And I think that that's awesome that you're blessing people in the way that you are.
I appreciate that. Really do. I just feel like it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And like I said, like when you heal from these things, like it gives you a different perspective, I would hope, for other people. I know for me, that's what it did for me. Like it gave me a way different perspective on how I see things. And I'm very grateful for that, for sure.
I just wanted to ask about your therapy experience. Um, how long did you do therapy, and did you have to switch from therapists a couple times?
I did, yes. I did therapy, I would say, for about 1.5, about almost 2 years.
Okay.
when I got clean, like I was able, like when I got to that treatment center that I got a scholarship, that I worked with a therapist there, and I was there for 3 months, and then I went to another program, and I worked with that therapist for another 3 months, and then I got to like a cash pay sober living. So I seen like a therapist for I think 6 months when I was at that cash pay sober living, because cash pay sober living is just cash pay. You just pay rent. So I had to use my outside resources to find a therapist, and I did. So I worked with this other therapist. Her name was Leah, and I worked with her for about 6 months, and then let's see, I went down to Laguna Hills, and I worked with a therapist there for like 2 months, and then I came out to Mid City, LA, and I was doing Zoom calls with the therapist. And mind you, like while I'm doing therapy, like I also have a council of free therapy. Like I get to talk to like my barber, my pops, like
Hmm.
my pastor in Orange County in Anaheim, his dad who's a pastor, um, and my pastor in Dallas, Mr. Luby. And I get to talk to these men. I get to ask them questions, and ask them how they heal through things and how can I heal through things. And they just they give me the advice, and I look at that as therapy. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely it's a role.
Even in the Bible, it says in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. And
Mhm.
so you sound like a therapy connoisseur. You've had lots and you're surrounded, like it seems like intentionally,
Mhm.
with all these voices.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you, I mean, obviously you would encourage anybody that's been in addiction to hurry up and run to therapy, right?
Yeah, run the therapy, because there's so many things that we experience in our addictions, man. Like when you're living that lifestyle, man, there's a lot of things that go unsaid, that go unprocessed, right? Like there's things you probably got to take to your grave, but like if someone is to get clean, then yeah, I would seek them to go to like therapy, counseling, like as soon as they get clean, honestly, because like the sooner the better, like I wish I would have done this sooner, but like I said, like my path was laid out for me, the way was laid out for me. It was all on God's timing. So yeah, it plays a huge part because it gives you so much time to like really understand what each of the things that you went through, like what they not only meant, but like how they made you feel, like bringing up old feelings, bringing up old emotions, and like working through that, like that's another reason why I journal, because like when there's certain situations that go on in my life, I'll write them down. This is gonna sound crazy, but when I first got clean, and I still do it, but I would write down the things that would make me use, right? Different people, places, or things, different situations that would happen, what would I do? I would use drugs. I would,
Mhm.
cause havoc. I would do this, and I would write it down, the things I used to do. And now I write, what if all these things happen? What would I do now that I'm in recovery? And I would write down what I would do if, that now that I'm in recovery, I would seek counsel. I would go to a meeting. I would call my sponsor. I would help somebody else, like, and I would actually implement and apply these things to my life. So therefore, when I get into those situations, it comes naturally because I already have it jotted down.
Mhm.
So that's something that, oh my God, that helps me tremendously, and I always pass that advice on to others, because it puts it in your face of what you would do when you're in your addiction, and like, what, like how small something can be that you'll still use over, it's crazy what we use for, like, it's a beautiful day outside, the sun's out. I'm gonna shoot some heroin, or dang it, like I didn't like what my boss said to me. I'm gonna go, do some dope in the restroom. The most littlest thing, what I'm saying, that is really it's crazy when you look at it, So now it's like, okay, it's beautiful, I'm going to run now. The thing that my boss didn't say that I didn't like, you know what? I'm gonna not even let it affect me, because like we're at work, maybe I did make a mistake. Let me look at that. Let me better myself, So yeah.
Mhm. So you choose an alternate response. So you write in, you have it pre-planned. So you
Mhm.
get to pick, okay, what response am I going to make now that the same thing has happened? I used to do this, but now I'm going to choose this. So
Correct.
literally you make a conscious choice and choose something else and get a much better result.
Much better result. Oh yeah. Mhm.
Beautiful, beautiful. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was my pleasure. I'm glad I got to get on here, and just share a little hope for sure.
Awesome.